Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And I'm very excited today to be discussing artificial intelligence, the ethics behind it, and also some of the regulatory framework that's developing around it. It's kind of a new frontier, and it's something that employers really need to be cognizant of. And today, my two guests are Rob Szyba, who is partner at Seyfarth Shaw. Excuse me, that's Seyfarth Shaw, and also Isabelle Bichler, who is co-founder and COO at retrain.ai, which is a vendor of artificial intelligence for developing self-evolving ontologies of your workforce's skills and also the roles that you have at your organization. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, Brent.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't I give you both an opportunity here to kind of introduce yourselves and just give us a little bit of a background on why you're so interested in this topic and what qualifies you to discuss it. Isabelle, how about you go first?
Sure. So I'm Isabelle. I'm as you said, I'm the COO and co-founder of retrain.ai. Retrain.ai, just to kind of recap about it. So we're an AI-powered platform for managing talent into the future of work with an end-to-end application for talent management, talent acquisition, learning and development, and talent insights. We're built on the intelligence comprised of billions of data points from labor market data with global compliances and bias prevention built in. And when I mentioned bias prevention, that's why today I want to talk about what are the biases that are created, what is the AI, how is responsible AI here to help all that. And just a quick kind of background about me. I'm an attorney, and I'm also graduating now from the Stern Business Schools at NYU at the graduate program of risk management. And my research is about the risk of diversity and inclusion, and specifically about tools, responsible AI's tools to prevent biases, to promote DEI. So that's about me. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Rob.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me. My name is Rob Szyba. I'm a partner at Seyfarth, and I focus on advising employers on various federal, state, and local requirements in hiring, employee relations, and terminations of employment. I also defend employers in lawsuits that challenge various employment practices. In my practice, my focus has been on various concepts relating to discrimination and bias, disparate treatment, and disparate impact on employees, both on, under federal regulatory and statutory frameworks, as well as state and municipal level. So I've had quite a bit of different angles on the types of biases that we're talking about, including on this new, the new frontier of AI and how that falls into these frameworks and into a lot of these concepts. So happy to discuss.
Yeah, and it's a very fast developing, and I'd say we're probably still in the early. Are we still in the early stages? Maybe we're not anymore. The regulatory framework always takes a little while to kind of catch up. Yeah, really looking forward to hearing your insights here. Why don't we start with just kind of a broad question around AI, and why is it being adopted so much specifically in human capital management as an HR technology? What's driving this? Isabelle.
Sure. So yes, we see definitely an increase of more than 55% from last year in adoption of AI and automation. And that's been around, it's not new, but of course, COVID-19 accelerated all these processes of adoption tremendously. And mainly the reason is to optimize and reduce cost. And this is what AI and automation are doing. Specifically in human resources, you see it for optimization of talent. And this is really what we're here at Retrain AI, what we're doing. We're optimizing different categories such as talent hiring, talent acquisition, talent management, learning and development, and informing HRs with a lot of data points from labor markets to understand what's going on in their domain and base their decisions upon data. So that's the main driver. Another driver is also the increasing diversity and equity and inclusion efforts. These are the things that we see across the board, across industries. Specifically, you see a very significant an uptick rise in finance, but basically trying to put more efforts into DI initiatives. We see 58% increase in the spending on these different efforts. So these are the second, this is the second driver. Another thing is that is also correlated to what's going on with COVID is the challenges that HR have right now in terms of the labor market. So there's a tight labor market in terms of the shortage of talent. And you see that everywhere. Again, you see specific industries that are more under pressure, such as healthcare, for example. There are 580,000 nurses in demand, and also software developers and data scientists talking about AI, and also truck drivers. So that's one thing. So it's called the war for talent. The second thing, and I'm sure you're very well familiar with, Brent, is the Great Resignation. So there's a quit rate of 4% per month, and it's just growing. So people are living in droves. So these are the challenges that HRs have, companies have. And so again, taking all this into consideration, you see the rise of adoption of AI to help HRs and also promote DEI efforts. And now the question arises, is this AI safe? Is this trustworthy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I want to dive into that because there's a lot of interesting stuff that I've been hearing, a lot of it from you folks. But first, I just want to kind of hit on that Great Resignation piece of the puzzle for a moment here. And also how it fits in with the idea of a self-evolving ontology. Maybe you could just delve into that specifically a little bit so that we understand just exactly what it means when we're applying AI in this context.
So for us, we look at everything by skills. We look at a person as an aggregation of skills, and occupation, a role as an aggregation of skills. And so at this atomic level gives us a better understanding of, first of all, what's going on in the market, what are the occupations on the rise, what are the skills declining and emerging, how is automation actually affecting that, right? There's a lot of skills that now are obsolete, you're not using them anymore. And on the other hand, there's a lot of new skills coming in. So first we want to understand what's going on in the market, and that's what our technology does. It ingests billions of data points from different sources, such as job boards to understand demand, such as profiles online, such as LinkedIn, for example. Courses, actually, educational content also gives you the understanding of the trend. So we can predict what are the skills in demand, what are the skills of tomorrow, and help organization prepare and understand first what the inventory of skills they have currently and what should they have and enhance specifically, and what are the specific areas in their organization they need to actually add skills and be prepared for the future of work. So that's the first thing. And again, then it helps, and we provide this use case application for the day-to-day work that HR have for hiring, for training, for managing their talent. So basically we see, and that's the skills gap we call, the skills gap is widening due to automation and AI. And so if you want to be, actually all of us, if we want to be relevant in the next 5 years, we need to significantly upskill and reskill ourselves. So that's where we come in and help organizations understand what are the areas, if it's healthcare, finance, manufacturing, retail, where they need to enhance their skills and upskills and reskills their talent.
Yeah. And for the employer, the benefit is kind of, well, it's probably more than twofold, but what I can think of right off the top of my head is, for one, because of the tight talent market right now, it's good to know what you actually have inside the organization already that could be developed through, career pathing and training and this sort of stuff, right? And at
Exactly.
this, yeah, and at the same time, you're combating that great resignation to a degree, right? Because you're giving your existing internal talent a rationale to stay.
And
Because okay,
exactly.
now, oh, my employer understands me better. And what I find to be so fascinating about this and is that with the application of AI, right, it actually makes the workplace feel more human, because that ultimately is a human feeling or a human desire to be, of belonging, of feeling like my employer cares about me or understands me at least, right? So
Exactly.
that's a human result.
And so we use AI basically not to displace people, to enhance them. So that's the power we give to HRs now, to understand your skill set. And now we can actually offer you many more opportunities that we have, but we didn't know you could actually be relevant for. And we
Yeah.
see that one of the top reasons for people leaving companies, talking about the great resignation, is actually not being able to see how they can develop and progress. What is the career path waiting for them within this company? So now when we understand what is the probability of a person to progress in a specific trajectory of his careers, we can see how it aligns to the company's strategy, the strategy of a company, and actually connect the dots and offer the person the different opportunities that layer in their company. If it's training opportunities, positions, mentors to upskill and reskill, and also full-time positions. And so we decrease this quit rate. And of course, we bring a lot of value to these employees to be more engaged, more productive.
Yeah. Super interesting. So I have two questions for you, Rob. One is sort of a broad question. I'm just curious around the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. Are you seeing, because this has occurred to me, and I've kind of asked around, and I'm not sure what the answer is yet, but is there kind of a regulatory is there a compliance facet to DE&I that's developing vis-a-vis AI or just employment law in general?
Well, that's a great question. With the DEI concept, that concept has evolved and stands on the shoulders of a number of other initiatives and developments over the years. Certainly going back to the civil rights movement 50, 60, 70 years ago, there have been efforts to reduce disparate impacts and treatments of employees over the years. The DEI concept, like I said, has been developing over a number of years, and a lot of the regulatory framework that exists is meant to support that. The current efforts that exist are sort of evolutions of previous efforts and previous initiatives, previous solutions that were found. So in terms of a focus on this, I'll give you a great example. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, certainly takes a look holistically at organizations and employers at all levels and looks for disparate impacts. So for example, policies or processes that are used, different practices in business that are used that might have a disparate impact on a certain group more so than others. Now, the policy may be neutral on its face. It may be a very benign policy, but in practice, when it's implemented, there's a certain disadvantage to a certain group. So that's an agency, as a quick example at the federal level, that looks at these issues on a much broader scale, from a much broader perspective, and certainly looks to address those issues through already existing framework. I mean, the laws that exist in most jurisdictions are both broad enough and flexible enough that they can be utilized conceptually for new technologies as they are implemented. So, just to kind of bring it back to the AI front, the same thing that I said about a certain policy or practice that appears benign, if it has a disparate impact on a certain group, if hypothetically there was an AI solution that was presented that was functioning in a way that excluded members of a certain race or a certain demographic based on a legally protected category, the framework exists to be able to address that.
Yeah.
You don't really need to create new laws to fully regulate this, because those laws are flexible enough to apply in this context.
Interesting. And I guess what that sort of prompts in my mind is that, sort of the flip side of that is that, and kind of parlaying with what Isabelle was saying previously, AI can actually help an organization to ensure that it does not run afoul of these types of this type of a framework, right? If it's in a in a way that sort of ensures DE&I, right? So that there's a sort of an equal a comparable representation of various groups within the organization. So that's what's super interesting to me is, that and we're not going to get to it quite yet, but I want to get to it, is this idea of responsible AI and all that. But we're kind of getting right into that right now, where AI can be a double-edged sword, and let's make sure we use the right edge of the sword, right?
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, Rob, I know that also there was some recent legislation law that's going to go in effect, I think, in early 2023. Excuse me, 2023.
You're taking us back 20 years, Brett.
Yeah, I know.
A little time travel.
Yeah, I know. AI is yeah, that was a slip of the tongue. But anyways, so yeah, there's some laws coming into effect in New York around this hiring practices with AI. Can you delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I if it's okay, I'd like to kind of take a step back real quick to something that you said about responsible AI and this as a solution for some of the disparate impact that I've been talking about. What's interesting from my vantage point is that in the grand scheme of, the universe, I guess, AI is relatively early in the way that it's implemented in the workplace, and the possibilities are vast. There's a lot of opportunity, but the problem is, the first thing that comes out, the first solution that we see is probably not going to be the perfect end all, optimized solution that's ever going to exist. It's a work in progress. And from my vantage point, we're still at a relatively early stage in development. So I can see theoretically something being developed, in the near future that is a great solution and is well intentioned, but operates in the way that maybe it doesn't address all the DEI issues as adequately as we would like. And that's okay. That's okay. And that's going to be an opportunity to learn and improve. Things like, and kind of bringing it back to your specific question now, New York City did pass a law this year that requires an audit of whatever AI tool is being used in the HR context. And it also penalizes employers that don't perform the audit, but also gives the option to employees to ask the employer to use a non-AI process for their candidacy for employment. So the simple version of that law is basically that. It's an audit requirement and giving the employees the opportunity to opt out of AI. Now, what's interesting to me about that is that law was passed a couple of months ago. It goes into effect in January 2023. But at the moment, in order to perform these types of audits that we're talking about, it requires use of that tool and enough data to be able to meaningfully analyze and assess how these AI functions are performing. They may be performing optimally, they may have room for improvement, and that's okay. The issue that I'm seeing is that the law went into effect at a relatively early process to regulate the use of AI. And my concern is that it's going to stifle that development, because now we don't really have a set standard for what is an acceptable benchmark, or an error rate, or what's the data set that we're supposed to be analyzing. And candidly, we don't really have a lot of insight from what the law says to be able to figure those things out. My worry is that over the course of the next 8, 6, however many months it's going to take to get this law implemented, my concern is that employers are going to be kind of put in the crunch. You know, you have to comply with this law, but we haven't really figured out what the standards are. So what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
and
the
I
law
think,
is silent about it. It doesn't say anything. There are no criteria in
right,
this law.
How do I
right.
know if I've complied? Yeah, and that's a good question. And this, I have a very kind of I guess granular question about this law. Is the requirement simply to conduct the audit and say, okay, here's the audit, or are there consequences for the audit showing certain things, or do the certain things shown by the audit open up the employer to other regulations that may apply, or what is the requirement? Is it just the audit, or?
All great questions, Brian. And the law is silent on just about all of them.
Wow.
It just says that you have an independent audit, whatever it means. It's not really defined.
Huh.
Right.
Can't,
And
go ahead.
that's a little bit of the crunch that I was talking about, putting employers in. So you're supposed to do an audit, but we don't know who's supposed to do it, what the criteria is that they're supposed to use, what data are they supposed to analyze, and what result are they trying to achieve in order to receive a passing score.
Right.
So now what? Where does that leave you?
Yeah.
So I think actually it's true. What the regulator has done is kind of advanced too fast without really thinking about it, right? So we need to put the content into that. And as a tech company that is really advanced here, we can help. And we're bringing the forefront of responsible AI. And we're actually on the board of the innovative program of the World Economic Forum to create a certification for responsible AI, because as Rob just said, there's no benchmark. You can see that actually the EU, the European Commission, has already started that work, and they're very advanced in Europe about it. There's the law, it's a national law, was enacted and is in effect from April 2021. So it's already there, and there's a standard. There's also some other laws also now in Illinois about video interviews, and also in Colorado, and now there's a bill in California. You see a rising in these kind of regulatory measures. But again, I think there are some benchmarks for that. There are some measures to take. And for now, because, and I understand your concern, Rob, but I think the problems that are faced, that HR are faced with, are so big. So they're definitely willing to try to use AI. And AI, by the way, this law is only talking about AI used for promotions and hiring. So for retention, for training, for development, for management of employees, that's a different thing. And I agree that there is kind of a concern, but we can fill it in with a lot of different criteria that already are in practice. They're the best practices, but definitely there's a need for a more defined criteria for that.
If I could just, if I may, looking at this sort of at first blush here, it seems to me that the greatest risk to the organization is in the aspect of the law that gives employees the opportunity to opt out of the AI, right? So that's, and I can understand that at first pass. You want, people are kind of, AI sounds kind of scary until you look into it more, and then depending on your perspective, it looks more scarier, or maybe less scary, right? Responsible AI, for instance, being the less scary. But it's interesting to me because because if you have a situation that, see, to me, this is a self-defeating almost regulation, right? Because if you look at a solution like such as a self-evolving ontology informed by responsible AI, you're only ensuring that your employees are going to be happier, right? And so it's almost a sad thing to see that a lot of people who may not understand how it works would decide just right at the outset to opt out. And by the same token, to me, it seems that this is an opportunity for vendors who have who have responsible AI that isn't going to exclude people, that's going to actually be inclusive, that's going to promote inclusivity and greater harmony and greater positive employee sentiment. It's an opportunity for them to say, hey, look, use us. I mean,
Exactly.
as the regulatory framework kind of catches up here, understandably so. I think it's tough to talk about AI without mentioning Elon Musk at some point. So I will, this obligatory Elon Musk mention, but just very briefly, I remember viewing a YouTube video of an interview of him from a few years back where he said, we have to get out ahead of AIs. We need to understand it and put some sort of a regulatory framework around it. And maybe that was an impetus or an impetus for industry to start thinking about, well, we need to be ethical with our AI. So maybe it's kind of a circular thing where they feed off each other. Those are some of my thoughts.
Well,
yeah,
Ron, I can kind of chime in with there is a tremendous amount of thought and research and study that's been conducted in the AI space. These concepts are not necessarily novel, and there is a lot of effort that's being made to optimize AI for a lot of different uses, not just the employment context. But as it relates here, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for development and really utilizing AI in a very positive and meaningful way. Going back to the concern I shared earlier about regulation, I'm not opposed to regulation necessarily, and I think it's, perhaps there is some framework that we need to work in. From my vantage point, however, I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, and perhaps, from my perspective, I think everybody would benefit from a little bit more collaboration between some of the folks that are regulating and some of the folks that are really deep into this space, because I think everybody agrees, or maybe I'm being a little optimistic about this. I think everybody would agree and get behind the concept of responsible AI. Nobody wants to sit there and develop AI that's harmful to humans and to the population and to workers. I think everybody's well-intentioned. The issue is that in order to meaningfully regulate and at the same time allow for positive development, I think that has to be a very thoughtful and deliberate process to that goal. My worry about some of the regulations that pop up is that we sort of smack down development before it really has a chance to grow and develop into in its natural state. So from my perspective, I would love to see a little bit more collaboration, idea sharing, whatever form it takes, but have a little bit more of a structure that's designed to promote the development of responsible AI and not just stop it before something bad happens.
It sounds like you're, and I would agree with you. It sounds like you're describing sort of not a protocol, like a framework, an open form framework, a guided open form framework for opening the lines of communication between various stakeholders, whether it be creators of AI or employment groups and these sorts of things, to help sort of shape that those regulations and move them in the right direction.
Yeah, generally, I would say I can't think of any instance where open communication has been a detriment to development of in any area. So yeah. I think that the more that we can work together, the more that we can understand each other's perspectives, chances are the better of an end result that we'll have. Efforts like what Isabelle is doing and what Retrain is doing, I think are extremely important to move that forward. Whether it's in the AI space or other areas of the law that I've seen, the more that folks are able to come together, share ideas, develop, listen to each other's concerns, that's all the better of a result that you normally get. The concern I have is that the more isolated we are and the less that we're doing that, the more that we're likely to run into friction between different stakeholders.
Yeah, I totally agree. Isabelle, maybe this is a good point. Two things that I think fit right into this in terms of people understanding AI a little bit better. If we can move the needle at all with this podcast, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? What's the difference between specifically a black box solution and a white box solution? If you could explain that. And also, and also the one other thing that I think it fits in is how can an AI be responsible AI? What does it mean for an AI to be a responsible AI?
So let me maybe explain a little bit about responsible AI. And I agree, just to kind of chime into what Rob said. I do agree that we need collaboration. It's not just us and the regulators, for example, tech companies and the ones that are bringing the forefront of technology. It's also academia and all these NGOs that are trying also to tackle this problem. There's many. And yes, we are partnering with different stakeholders to really kind of understand what does it mean? How do we solve this huge problem? Because AI is everywhere. It really is. It really is felt in every aspect of our lives. It's not just about HR, right? It's about lending and underwriting you when you're given a premium for your insurance, and whatever you do in your daily life involves AI now. And it's going to continue and rise. So how do we really make sure this AI is used well and responsibly? So a responsible AI, and this is really most of the criteria that you can see, the benchmark is talking about 5 dimensions for evaluation. The first one is the explainability of the AI. So you understand what is the input putting into the model, and what is the output? Why specifically did you use variables, these specific variables, and how did you get this input? So that is the first pillar, we could say. So you want to ensure that everybody understands. The vendor, sometimes you see vendors that are really having problems explaining the recommendation that their system is providing. Of course, the customers of this technology and the users, so they all understand, and it's explainable. It's also, people call it transparent. So that's both of them. It's kind of used interchangeably. The second thing is really the data quality and the compliance to privacy. And that's, of course, this is touching a lot of different points about privacy and security. So, of course, complying to that and using the data with the right consent and the compliance to privacy rights and human rights. Second is robustness of the data. So if you're using, it depends on the samples data that you're using, either for your training data sets and also for the data sets that you're really applying it to for your customer. So the more the data you're using is the sample size is larger, you are prone to less accurate and less mistakes. So that's the robustness of the data set. So it provides accurate and granular results. Accountability is something that is now been discussed. So meaning that organizations and vendors are actually operating AI systems that they are accountable for that, for their proper functioning. So they're running audits themselves. So they have, and that's what the law is telling you. It's telling you, you have to take responsibility of it, and you need to make sure it is audited. There are many different methodologies to audit AI, but I'm just laying out all the different pillars. The last one is really the fairness algorithm. So that's really the models that you're using. And so that's the way to mitigate these biases. So neural networks, for example, that's one of the models, and deep learning. These are technologies that use really billions of data points in the inputs. And that's why we call them black boxes, because this is harder to explain what inputs were put into the model and what are the outputs. That's the problem with these kind of black box. And white box, of course, are the opposite. You can actually, it's really touching upon all these different pillars that I've just described. So it's checking the box on them. So it's transparent, explainable, robust, unbiased, the fairness algorithms that are tested periodically, and so forth. So that's really the technology we use, for example, because it's based on the ontology, on the skills. So you see exactly the skills that are put into the models. We're not looking, for example, just to give an example to explain all that technicalities. So if you're looking at a person, right, some technologies could look at past performance, right? And you know it's widely known, the cases with Amazon, for example, right? And another company. So they were looking for the ideal type of software developer. I'm not going to go into the full detail, but they were creating this ideal type of top performer. So based on that, it learned, the machine, they fed it and trained it to detect these kind of top performers. So the problem is the model was based upon white males. So that's the output also that you got from these bias. That's a biased model, right? It used variables that are not supposed to be there. So based on skills, just looking at the different skills and also testing it constantly against different samples, right? To see if there are differences to the benchmark, if it's the population, if it's a specific industry distribution, you're able to detect biases and reduce them.
Yeah, that's a great example. We've had a few podcasts in the past here in HR Tech Chat where we've discussed AI from sort of a philosophical level, and I'm not a philosophy person. I don't have any schooling in that, but it's interesting to talk about and to think about. And one of the things that you mentioned is the having as much data as possible informing the AI, right? And that increases the potential for it to be as unbiased as possible, and that's come up in from a slightly different angle in previous conversations where we talk about, well, how do you inform AI that's most reflective of the human experience, right? Well, you include as broad of a spectrum as possible of human sentiment to make it so. And so that was just that's interesting to me. So, the whole idea is more data. It's much.
I mean, for sure, if you go, and the just use a sample size data of a company by itself, just one company, it's not going to be enough, right? And some technologies are doing it. We're saying no, aggregate many companies and public sources. So there you have a right sample size for your training purpose and also for the usage itself of the technology.
I'm just looking at the time, and we could probably talk about this all day. We like to keep the podcast about 35 minutes though, so I think that we'll let's kind of conclude here. Rob, any additional thoughts from your side of the aisle, the legal aspects of this?
Sure. Well, I'll say this. I think we're in an exciting time for AI because we're seeing a lot of possibilities, and they're at our fingertips. We're on the verge of a lot of great developments, I think, and a lot of novel and great uses to this stuff. The only reservation and concern that I have is that the less that we even do things like this, have a dialogue and talk about some of the different issues and aspects of it, it does raise the potential for a lot of the friction I mentioned earlier. And just hearing Isabelle talk now about aggregating data and the types of inputs that result in optimal solutions and analyses and optimization of AI. This is exactly what I was referring to when I said earlier about New York not having enough standards or really enough development in their law. So my concern is that before it gets off the ground, we regulate it and stifle development before we can actually realize some of the potential. So I look forward to seeing, what some of the capabilities are and what we can do with AI to enhance, whether it's hiring, whether it's training, whether it's the employment experience that's going to be positive for both employers and employees. But we'll see how we go. We'll see where we wind up with this.
Yeah, exactly. It's a critical time in the development of AI. And it's also an opportunity to kind of get out ahead of it now and to start developing it with intentionality, with sort of a broad respect for sort of the human condition, so that it becomes sort of a complement to our existence, which I think which is what we're all striving for. Isabelle, any closing thoughts?
I would say I think responsible AI should be just a part of every AI strategy right now. So on every top management's agenda, they should also, when they're talking about AI, they should also think about the responsible AI, ethical AI. And we're here to help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you both for joining me today for this episode. I just want to do a quick call out. We're going to be doing a webinar on June 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern, where we're going to dive into the details and parameters of the new New York City law that we've been discussing today, and what enterprises need to know now to begin preparing. So be on the lookout for that, folks. There'll be a registration for that soon. In the meantime, again, thank you both so much. Really important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us,
Absolutely.
bro.